Welcome to the Red Half of Sheffield Meets. And we have a particularly cool, interesting view of the EFL. And I am joined, if you guys don't know him, I certainly know him by all the content that he certainly puts out. And I believe he's doing a 72 team preview. The one, the only Gabriel Sutton. How are you doing this afternoon, good sir?
Hi, Chad. Thank you so much for having me on. Really excited to be on the podcast. I'm doing summer deep dives over on EFL debate. So, as a bit of an early plug, you can subscribe to me on to that on YouTube and on Spotify, where you can find all those summer deep dives. So, yeah, you can go and check those out. But yeah, very passionate about the EFL, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and I know probably the viewers are wanting, to talk Sheffield United. We're gonna do something completely different, and we're gonna do a little bit of a deep dive and get to know Gab and get his thoughts on the best three divisions in all of, even actually I'll say the best four divisions counting the National League, because we can't forget our friends in the National League. Um, and just get his thoughts. First, Gab, tell us a little bit about yourself and how
Sure.
where did you come into the love of the EFL and how you got into all of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I started out, I was a Birmingham City fan growing up. And then I guess I always kind of had a loose interest in the lower leagues. And then I went to randomly watch a game between Burton Albion and Chesterfield in 2014. And Chesterfield won promotion that day. And that sort of kind of hooked me because I liked the feeling of being closer to the pitch and all that kind of thing. And then actually set up a website called the Football Lab, and I worked on that for 2 or 3 years, and had a reasonable amount of success with that. And then off the back of that, I started to get some work with other clients, and I've been doing that ever since really. So, but yeah, it's kind of started out with a website called the Football Lab, and writing about the football league.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. If I had the time, I would almost emulate what you do, because I mean, it is a thing of greatness. Just watching the content you put out is absolutely phenomenal.
You're very kind,
So
thank you.
so my next question for you: of the four leagues that I spoke of,
Hmm.
what, in your opinion, what league is the best? Because I'll give you mine.
Go on.
In and I think that out of all four leagues, League One is the toughest to get out of. But in my opinion, League Two to me is the most interesting league that I
Interesting.
love to follow. Away from Sheffield United's current situation in the championship,
Hmm.
I really am. I'm really fell in love with League Two. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say it's more common in League Two that you get underdog surprise stories that aren't so much dictated by finances. Last season was a little bit different because you had Wrexham, you had Stockport, you had Mansfield going up automatically. But even last season, you had Crawley winning promotion via the playoffs when they were everyone's favourite for relegation
Mm-hmm.
that season. So I think League Two is a really exciting one. But I would probably say if we're talking about 24-25 season, I think League One is the one to watch because for me, that season, you've got 16, 18 teams, all with playoff or promotion ambitions that are serious, not just, we'd like to, serious playoff or promotion ambitions. So I think that's a really exciting league, and I think that's going to be so competitive next season. So yeah, really excited about League One next year, but I've always been a big fan of League Two as well.
Yeah, I mean, League One this year, oddly enough, we do have some big spenders in that league this year
Mhm.
too. The likes of obviously Birmingham just dropped down there, and they're whatever
Mm.
you want to call it,
They're
American
my team,
consortium.
actually.
I mean, they're dumping money into players left and right, and you have the likes of Bolton and whatnot. Who, I guess we'll go. My next question, I'll do the championship last. Who are your early, super early contenders for promotion. I mean, because we still have about a month. Most of the teams are starting to get
Mhm.
back into some early preseason training. I guess go through it starting with League One, and we'll go League One, League Two, National League, and then end with the championship. Touch on each one of those leagues. Who you think has a chance for promotion, or let's shrink it down. Let's say, who do you think wins those leagues?
I can't give you those predictions yet. I have a rough idea in my mind right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't give you the prediction yet because I've got a 1 to 24 season preview coming up in late July, and I've got to keep that sort of as an exclusive. So I can't quite share you that,
Yeah.
um, but I think in terms of, I mean, look, you've got some pretty obvious contenders in League One because Birmingham and Huddersfield coming down with really big budgets. You've got Bolton there who have improved continuously under Ian Evatt. Peterborough under Darren Ferguson, they'll lose a few key players, but you can never write off. Peterborough have challenged for promotion in 8 of Darren Ferguson's 9 seasons in charge at that level. So Peterborough are so often a threat. I think some of the teams that finished around mid-table last season are going to get stronger, like Wigan, Charlton, Wickham even have got a Kazakhstan billionaire owner. I mentioned Charlton, they've got Nathan Jones in charge for the full season. That's going to make a difference. I really like Nathan Jones. And then the teams coming up are strengthening as well. So I think, again, it's going to be really competitive. But and Rotherham, of course, we mentioned, they've appointed Steve Evans as well, who's won quite a few promotions as a manager too. So, yeah, it's going to be super competitive.
Yeah, that is it's from top to bottom, as you mentioned. It's going to be one hell of a race to the finish to see who gets in those promotion spots. I'm particularly have a keen eye. I think Wrexham are going to struggle this year in League One. I think, obviously it's easier to buy your way out of League Two, and them in Stockport County and even Mansfield for the most part of last year. They kind of took the league by the scruff of the neck, and Mansfield did have a little bit of a wobble there at the end, but they were able to make it over the line. Yeah,
What do you
I'm
think,
just
Chad? Did you support Sheffield United when Nigel Clough was manager?
I did not. That
Yeah.
would have been pre me.
Okay.
I came in right around the wilder bottom of League One
Oh, okay.
years.
Oh my God! So that was perfect timing then, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was a roller coaster of emotions in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. The ups and flow, or the ups and downs, and that's what's cool to see. If you look at the likes of Luton going all the way from the National League all the way to the Premier League, that's
Sure.
what the story is about. And everybody, they get publicized over here in the States, but if Wrexham, Stockport County, because they're almost the same club, they have big owners that spend a lot,
Mm,
and you know now they're in the same league and they both got promoted last year. I'm curious to see how long it takes them to, if this is their goal, to inevitably get to the championship and then inevitably down the road get promoted to the Premier League. It's something cool to see, to just watch the journey from the National League
mm.
all the way to the top flight. Even though I hate the top flight, it's cool to see him just
Yeah.
be in there for a year
Isn't
and
that
then
a funny thing, Chad? I think a lot of people feel like that. They love the euphoria of getting to the Premier League, but
Mhm.
actually being in the Premier League is just not that fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I started off our podcast last year saying that I hope we go down straight away, because and I would be on. They would have me on other podcasts, and they say, "Well, what's your ambitions for this year to stay up?" And I said, "No, I hate this league. I want to be relegated." And and they're like, "Well, that's no way to be about a team that just got newly promoted from the championship." And I said, I understand that, but also, this is no fun. There's 6 to 8 teams that are going to win every week, and then my team's going to be just get hammered every week. Yeah, we'll be in a few of them, win a few of them. We ended up winning 3 games last year, and I said we should have been relegated by Christmas, but you had points deductions and everything kept us in it almost all the way to the end. I said it's no fun. I like going into a game week and having a chance to win
Mm,
or at least get a draw, not going into this being like, well, this is another inevitable defeat.
mm.
This is no fun
Do
to me.
Chad, I know you said we weren't going to talk about Sheffield United on this podcast, but I'm actually curious. Do you feel like for this season you actually need a year to rebuild so that if you do, if and when you do get back to the Premier League, you're actually got a team that you feel is going to be ready for that sort of challenge? Whereas I think if you came back straight up this season, I don't think you'd have a squad that's ready to do it, that's ready to stay up.
Okay, I'm going to give you a tongue-in-cheek answer, and then I'll give you a serious answer.
I'm
I
only
never
after the tongue-in-cheek answer.
the tongue-in-cheek answer is I never want to be promoted back to the Premier League
Okay.
unless it's fun, unless it's financially, like if we didn't get promoted 2 seasons ago, we would have been broke.
Yeah.
We have an owner that doesn't spend any money, blah blah blah, so on
Mm.
and so forth. So we needed to get promoted 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, my honest thoughts of when do we make a charge back towards the Prem? There's a lot of players that last year to me got exposed, and it didn't help selling the likes of Ilman and I and Sanderberg
Yeah.
2 weeks before the season started. Yeah, that already
You
put
were
us
going to
behind the
war
eight ball.
without a gun, really, weren't you?
Yeah, so I mean, right there when you sold those two players, you knew you were relegated. It was bang on for relegation. So this season we cleared out. We've cleared a lot of the players out. Some of them, the journeymen that had been from League One all the way up to the Prem, and then bounced around with us. We cleared that out, which needed to happen. There's a few more players that I hope go out the door via either transfers. We just scrap them. And then yes, use this season to. It's so hard because we're in limbo right now, where the American consortium is allegedly going to buy Sheffield United, but it looks like it's going at a snail's pace. And
Right.
I don't know if it's going to get over the line before we have that influx of cash to come in and buy respectable, fringe players in the champion or in the Prem and good championship players. We just don't. Our pockets aren't that deep. We're allegedly going to sign a couple of free transfers here in the next couple of weeks.
Mhm.
Get that ball rolling. But if we do have the takeover and the influx of cash, it might be a quicker return to the Prem than we would had honestly ever envisioned. It might be a one and done. If it gets over the line and we don't have time to get the signings through the door in the summer,
Mhm.
we might look to January transfer window to bring players in and bolster that squad for the stretch run. But
Mhm.
in all honesty, with the team we have now, I would like to consolidate this year,
Mhm.
finish about 8th to 18th, somewhere in there. Somewhere in that. I think honestly, my early predictions has us probably finishing 16th, 17th with the players that we have now.
Interesting.
But
I mean, you say that, Chad. I mean, I've not had a recent look at the squad, but you've got players like Gus Harmer, players that you would think would be good championship players. I
it's
would think.
if we build the right players, this is based on yes, Gus Hamer, Ali Arblaster,
Yeah, Ollie
good.
Arblaster was amazing for Port Vale.
He
I think he could
he was, and he looked a Premier League player last year when he came into our side the second half of the
Mhm.
season. So I mean, it's a bit cynical saying us finishing 16th. We probably will finish 5th to 10th, honestly, with the squad we have.
Mhm.
But if we, let a few players go on transfers and so on and so forth, I think if we take this year to consolidate, you know, don't get up so much hope for this upcoming season and then reload and go again next season to make the run, because inevitably if you're having an American consortium come in to buy Sheffield United, you inevitably don't want them to be in the second division, because over here in the States, that's all that's on the TV is the Premier League. You want the
Mhm.
Premier League money. You want your name up in lights saying Sheffield United Premier League side.
Mhm.
You want to, everybody talks about the Brentford and Brighton model. You want to get into the Premier League and you want to establish yourself. Now, I'm going to inevitably hate that, because we're going to be, if that does happen, which means that the club is well run and we don't have to worry about that and we can establish ourselves. Yes, that's fine and dandy. I'm happy with that. That means the club is successful on a global stage because more and more people will figure out that the name is Sheffield United and it's not Sheffield. Um,
Oh God, I hate it when Ian Wright was saying kept saying Sheffield.
oh yeah, it drives me up a wall, and
Yeah.
it's like you have the American supporters that the only reason they know about us is because our partners over here that show the coverage of the Premier League, they call it Sheffield United. But then
Mhm.
it's like when you talk to the Americans and they're like they call us Sheffield, and you just like want to say, okay, you're a Manchester United supporter. What if I call you Manchester? Or something along the lines of that, or like something along the lines of
Yeah.
they just don't get it. It blows my absolute freaking mind. And they,
Mm.
oh, we're football fans, we're giant football fans. Okay, Sheffield. I was like, first of all,
Yeah.
I was a little bit of a dick to some people because I said, well, Sheffield FC, they're in like the ninth division, 10th division of English football.
Yeah.
I don't know who
I
they're
mean, to be
playing to.
fair, I mean, if they don't know, you don't know. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think it'd be nice for people if people can sort of be corrected on that sort of thing. Because do you know what? Like the identity of football clubs is really important to fans.
Hmm.
And I think do you know what? I don't think people. I think people can forgive the odd mistake. But for me, the big thing is when someone's been corrected on a mistake and they still use the abbreviation as a way, as almost like a power thing rather than a actually. Oh, I'm sorry, I've learned that it's now Sheffield United. That's kind of the thing that gets to me more than when someone makes a one-off sort of mistake on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, one other question for you: your favorite ground that you've been to?
Favorite ground.
Yes.
I love the Crown at Accrington Stanley.
Really. Really.
Yeah,
Why?
because the away end has like an open terrace, and you can see behind the open terrace, you can see the hillsides. It's lovely.
Hmm. Oh,
And do you know what I do? I really like grounds that are sort of a bit on the smaller side and just surrounded by hills. I find that a really
mhm.
appealing thing.
Um, quite the contrary. Your worst ground or most not
Oh,
liked ground.
I couldn't give you a word. As a Birmingham City fan, I'll say Villa Park. How about that? There you go.
Oh yeah. So honestly, you touch on your fandom for Birmingham City. What is your thoughts on the whatever you want to call it, the American consortium with Tom Brady at the helm, who probably
Yeah.
has no idea.
So mixed. I think I'm really excited on the one hand because first of all we've got an ambition, we've got hopefully a bit of a plan, we've got some money coming in, and it gives the club a lot more hope than it had had under the previous ownership regime. A bit more communication as well, but what I'm not so keen on is the fact that I think it's really hard for the ownership to accept when they've made mistakes, and that's a big thing for me. I don't mind when mistakes are made because I think that's we're all human, right?
Hmm.
We all make mistakes, but it's when I think people don't feel like they can sort of own up to that. So, for instance, we replaced John Eustace, who was doing an excellent job early on last season, and we sacked him because basically our CEO Gary Cook is best mates with Wayne Rooney's agent, Paul Stretford. So that was a disappointing decision, and it didn't go well. And then when we appointed Tony Mowbray after Rooney had been sacked, basically they allowed Mowbray to just do the press conferences on his own, which I think was a strategic decision because maybe Tom Wagner and Gary Cook knew that if they were on the press conference, they would have been asked about the decision to sack John Eustace, and they didn't want to face up to having made a mistake. And so that's a bit of a red flag that I have. Combined with there was one thing that the Mail reported. I don't know how accurate they say it was or to what extent, but there was a report that we'd been considering playing our home game against Wrexham next season in the United States,
Yeah.
which obviously is is morally bankrupt. Now, I don't think that idea was necessarily as advanced as maybe the Mail were reporting, but the fact that it's come from somewhere makes me a bit concerned that so it's kind of a trade-off really. So it's like I think we've got people who are very commercially minded and who are very minded about how it looks and what the brand is, and don't actually care that much about building real relationships. So that's something I don't love, but I also acknowledge that it's better than what we had before, and so I can live with it, but I'm not I'm not over the moon about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I did read the same article you were speaking about the game being played over in the States, and I just said no, no. Inevitably, it's going to be where the Premier League teams are playing at
Mhm,
least one or two of the. You're going to have your big rivalries. Liverpool, Man United are going to be played over here. It's inevitable. This is such an untapped market, and they see how much money is drummed up over here from the support of the Premier League. But you don't need to take it away from the EFL clubs.
mhm,
That that Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff are now with Sky's TV rights Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whenever the hell they're going to play the games now, the 5,000 different kickoff times. Um, those supporters need that. That's what brings the community together in a whole. And just bringing that game over here because there's two American ownerships, whoop de doo. Keep it where it is. You don't need to mess with that sort of game. That
mhm.
is, it just makes no sense.
Yeah.
Um, one more before we go. Your thoughts on the, as I just alluded to, the new Sky deal for the EFL, getting in their words, getting more eyes on it, and just basically moving the kickoff times around and showing more games.
Mm. Um, how do I feel about it? Do you know what? I don't actually know how it's going to affect kickoff times, because when I've seen it on the fixtures list, it looks pretty normal. Other than the opening day is like 12:30, 3 o'clock, and 5:30, so they have
Mhm.
different time slots. But I don't. I'm not sure. I have a huge take on it, actually, because I think there's about 800, 900 million coming into the EFL from the Sky Sports deal. So that's obviously going to help. I mean, I don't know what the distribution of that money is, though. So that's gonna make a big difference. But yeah, I'm glad that there is a TV deal there, and there is money coming into the EFL. That's my main thought on it.
Yeah. Well, would you be in favor of the alleged 3 p.m. blackout going away? Or are you a
Mm,
fan of that staying in place to keep the supporters going to their home team, whereas opposed to on a windy, rainy, blustery day, you know, instead of
mhm.
having 5,000 at a ground, you only have 2,500 because half of them decide to stay home.
Mm. It's a tough one. I've traditionally I've always been very much in favour of maintaining the Black Act, because I think it's really important that you preserve the appeal, I guess, of live football, and support kind of community clubs. And I like the idea that non-league clubs can sort of play at 3 o'clock, but then also show the 12:30 game and the 5:30 game, so they make a bit of money in the bar, but the 3 o'clock kind of gets preserved. So I do have a bit of a feeling that preserving the 3 p.m. blackout is going to be important. But then there's also part of me of um, how much how much is that going to actually change tendencies? Because there's a school of thought that it isn't going to change tendencies so much, that people they just have that habit of going, and they're going to go. Because so I'm sure there's going to be a large section of fans who aren't going to be affected,
Mhm.
but maybe there is a section of fans who are.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you're very true. Very
What do
true.
you think about that, Chad?
Ba- Based on how I've got into the game, uh, I am a big proponent for keeping it.
Hmm.
Now, if if they're going to lift it, I hope it's with the idea of more money filtering down to the 72.
Hmm.
And if you do lift it, that should be the end all be all game is, if we are going to lose money at the gates for all of these grounds, then these clubs better have some sort of stipend coming into them because,
Hmm.
you know, so, National League teams, they rely on that gate fee. Smaller teams in League Two, they rely on that gate fee to, keep the lights on and keep it going. If that were
Yeah.
to get cut in half, then they almost have to tighten the proverbial belt,
Mm.
and then you see them inevitably tumbling down because they're not able to keep pace with the teams in their league. A
Yeah.
couple of relegations, then you're off the periphery and you're down the rungs. But it's just something about the tradition.
Yeah.
There's always been a 3 p.m. blackout, but I'm also one of the probably few over here in the States that would love. I was a big proponent for Apple when they put their name into the hat to get the EFL rights,
Hmm.
because the way that they stream the MLS over here, where they do like you have the choice to watch all the games, and then
Mm.
they have almost a whip around show to show you all the goals or how the games are going. If I envisioned that for how Apple would have did the EFL, that would have been, I wouldn't have had enough room in my house to put TVs on the wall to watch
Mm.
all of the games. But I'm a traditionalist. I want the 3 p.m. blackout to stay
Mm.
unless there's some sort of structure
Yeah.
that's going to go around
I
it.
think the problem that you've had is with iFollow, which is the system that we have. You probably know in England is there's the distribution of money is a problem, and the Accrington Stanley owner has spoken out in the past. Called Andy Holt. He said that. When Accrington Stanley have hosted games against Ipswich in midweek, for example, Ipswich obviously have a huge fan base, right? But when instead of Ipswich fans travelling up on a Tuesday night, some of them would pay the um, pay Ipswich Town's equivalent of iFollow or Town TV or whatever it is, but they wouldn't give any money to Accrington Stanley when Accrington Stanley are the ones of paying the floodlight costs and they're the ones that are hosting the football match. So I think there's an issue with the distribution of wealth that's maybe a little bit out of balance somehow with the iFollow system. So I'd like that to change in whatever way possible.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. One more question, and I ask all of the people I have on the Red Half of Sheffield. If you're not covering the EFL and you're going to a football match, what is your go-to match beverage? It doesn't have to be
Oh,
alcohol. It can be whatever. It could be whatever you want.
do you know what? I love a coffee. There's a place just outside the Cheltenham town ground called Havana's Coffee. So I really like going there. Now I know there's probably going to be people watching. No, well, you can't have a coffee before a football match. You got to have a pint of beer. But for me, I do like a bit of a coffee. So I've got to hold my hands up to that one. But I do like Havana's in Cheltenham.
I'm finding that the more and more people I interview, yes, they're turning to coffee, because I say it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be it doesn't have to be a pint of beer or shots or whatever.
Mm.
It can be just something normal. And yeah, and most people are coming on and say, yeah, coffee. Um, all right, before we get out of here, Gab, give the people that are listening where they can follow you and watch all your content.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for that. So you can follow me on Twitter at Gab Sutton, and you can follow the hashtag EFL debate for my shows, which are available on YouTube and on Spotify. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm doing a series of what's called Summer Deep Dives, where I'm talking to fans of each of the 72 clubs across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. And so, yeah, having a bit of a laugh, having a good chat, and yeah, really enjoying it.
Yeah, cool deal. Definitely give his content a watch. It is as in depth as anybody can go into the 72 teams for sure. If you haven't done so, Red Half of Sheffield, you can follow me, C Jarvis _13, the podcast Red Sheffield on Twitter/X, YouTube, the Red Half of Sheffield. And until I have the honor of interviewing another esteemed EFL pundit, I will leave you with Up the Blades.